This happened in late October of 2022, near a small lake called Marion Lake, about 2 hours southeast of Salem, Oregon. It was me, my friend Mike, and his cousin Eli. We wanted one last camping trip before winter kicked in, somewhere remote and quiet. Mike had read about this lake online. No campgrounds, just wilderness, with a single dirt road leading in. No cell signal, no people. Sounded perfect. We got there just before sunset. The hike in was easy, about 2 miles. We found a decent flat spot under some tall evergreens with a great view of the lake. We set up the tent, made a fire, and cooked hot dogs. Typical guy stuff, just hanging out, joking around, taking in the crisp air and total silence. Too much silence, honestly. There were no birds, no frogs, not even bugs. Just the crackle of the fire and the sound of the lake. We joked about it being too quiet, but I felt it, like the woods were holding their breath. Around 11 p.m., we climbed into the tent. It was a 3-person dome, and we were packed tight. I was on the far left by the entrance flap. Mike was in the middle. Eli was on the right. We fell asleep quick, but at some point deep in the night, I woke up, and I didn't know why. No sound, just this weird, heavy feeling in my chest, like someone was pressing down on me. I looked over at the tent flap and saw the faint outline of someone standing just outside, perfectly still, silhouetted in the moonlight, not moving, not breathing, just watching. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just lay there, frozen, hoping it was a dream, hoping it was a shadow. But then the flap moved, just a tiny shake, a twitch, like someone lightly brushed it with their fingers. I blinked, and the figure was gone. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, but didn't want to wake the others. I convinced myself it was my imagination. Too many horror movies. I lay back down, staring at the roof of the tent, until I eventually drifted off again. In the morning, I didn't say anything, but Mike looked rough. Dark circles under his eyes. When I asked how he slept, he just said, "Weird dreams." Eli looked normal, cracking jokes like always. He said he slept like a rock. But that day, things felt off. We hiked around the lake and found a strange spot near the northern edge, like someone had built a little lean-to out of sticks and moss. Inside was a rusted coffee can, a damp wool blanket, and the burned-out remains of a candle. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt used. Eli said maybe it was from a hunter. But there were no guns, no cooler, no gear, just that can and blanket. And what looked like scratch marks in the bark of the nearby tree, long vertical lines like fingernails or a knife. We decided not to stay long. That night we kept the fire going late. None of us felt like going to bed. I finally laid down around 1 a.m. Mike stayed out a little longer. I woke up again, not from a sound this time, but because the tent felt wrong. Too cold, too quiet. I turned over and realized Mike wasn't there, just an empty sleeping bag. I sat up fast. Mike, no answer. I unzipped the tent and stepped out. The fire was out. The woods were pitch black. My flashlight barely cut through the fog rolling off the lake. That's when I saw him. Mike, standing at the edge of the lake, facing the water. Not moving. I called again. Mike. He didn't respond, just stood there, staring. I walked closer. When I got within 10 feet, he finally spoke, but he didn't turn around. He was here. I said, "Who?" He just whispered, "He watched me all night. He knows we're not supposed to be here." I grabbed his arm. "Come on, man. Get back in the tent." He didn't fight me, but he didn't say another word. When we got back inside, I noticed something. There was a smell. Faint, but sharp, like sweat and damp leaves. Not ours. I looked around with the flashlight, and on the back wall of the tent was a smear of muddy fingerprints. 4 long streaks, as if someone had run their hand along the outside while we slept. Eli freaked out, said we should leave right then. I agreed. Mike didn't speak the entire time we packed. He just stared at the woods. We hiked out in silence, headlights cutting through the mist as we drove away. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, Mike called me. He said he hadn't slept. He kept seeing someone in his yard at night. A tall figure just beyond the porch light. When he stepped outside with a bat, no one was there, but muddy boot prints were on the steps. He sounded messed up, paranoid. I told him to call the cops, but he said they wouldn't believe him. He said he followed me home. That night, Mike disappeared. His car was found parked in the lot of a public trailhead 20 miles from the lake. No note, no signs of a struggle. Just the car, locked. And in the passenger seat was that same rusted coffee can. No fingerprints, no DNA, just a folded piece of paper inside it. They never found Mike. I don't go camping anymore. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear footsteps on the gravel outside my window. Just slow, steady steps, like someone pacing, waiting. Let me take you back to a night I wish I could forget. It happened last September when my friends and I went on a weekend camping trip at a place called Bear Creek Forest in Oregon. Now, we're not strangers to the outdoors. We've done hikes, camped near lakes, even climbed Mount Hood once. But this time felt different from the moment we arrived. The plan was simple. 3 of us, me, my friend Lucas, and his girlfriend Mia, would hike into Bear Creek and set up camp for 2 nights. The forest is about 40 miles out of Eugene and is known for being pretty isolated. That's what we liked about it. No cell service, no people, just us and nature. But right before we reached the dirt path leading into the woods, we passed an old, weathered sign nailed to a tree. The letters were faded and cracked, but I could still read parts of it. Warning, area closed. Reports of unexplained disappearances. Enter at your own risk. We all stopped and looked at each other. Lucas just scoffed and said, probably just some local legend to keep people out. Mia seemed uneasy, but I shrugged it off too. We were already there, and the sun was starting to dip below the trees. We stepped past the sign and continued into the forest. We found a clearing about 2 miles in and set up our tents near a small stream. It was peaceful, eerily so. No wind, no rustling leaves, not even the distant chirp of insects. I remember thinking it was odd but didn't say anything. That first night was normal. We lit a fire, made hot dogs, shared a few beers. Around midnight, we all crawled into our tents. I had my own, while Lucas and Mia shared theirs. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was footsteps. Slow, crunching steps, like someone walking through the brush just a few feet from my tent. I froze. At first, I figured maybe it was Lucas going to pee, but the steps weren't moving in a straight path. They circled my tent, once, then again. Then they stopped completely. I held my breath. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. It felt like the forest itself was holding still. No footsteps, no wind. Just this heavy, unnatural quiet. After a minute or two, I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were walking away. I waited, heart pounding, until I eventually passed out from exhaustion. The next morning, I casually asked if either of them had gone outside during the night. Both of them shook their heads. I didn't press it, but I should have. That day, we hiked further into the woods. Mia kept saying she felt like we were being watched, and to be honest, I felt it too. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I expected to see someone, or something, ducking behind a tree. Then Lucas noticed something strange in the distance. It looked like a circle of rocks, maybe 50 yards off the trail. We walked over to it. It wasn't just a circle of rocks. It was a perfect ring of stones, with little stick figures tied together by what looked like animal sinew hanging from the trees above it. They spun slowly in the windless air. Mia wanted to leave immediately. Lucas said it was just a prank or some kind of ritual crap, probably from hikers. But again, we stayed. That night, everything escalated. We went to bed earlier, trying to shake the unease. But around 1 a.m., I woke up again, this time to whispering. Not loud enough to understand, but definitely voices. They were low, dry, like someone was speaking just inches from my ear. I sat up in my sleeping bag and strained to hear. Then I heard something brush against the side of my tent, like fingers. I snapped on my flashlight and unzipped the tent in one motion. Nothing. But that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was the trail of footprints, bare, human-like footprints, leading from my tent into the woods. Not just one set. Multiple. I rushed over to Lucas and Mia's tent, whispering for them to wake up. When they came out, I showed them the tracks. Mia looked like Shui. He was about to cry. Lucas finally admitted he'd heard whispering too, but didn't want to freak us out. We decided to pack up and leave at first light. But the forest had other plans. Around 4 a.m., while we sat by the dying campfire, we heard it. Something crashing through the woods, fast and heavy, like a person sprinting. But we couldn't see anything, just sound. Then we heard it again, this time from the other side. It was like we were being circled. That's when Mia screamed. She pointed to the trees. I'll never forget what I saw. There was a figure, tall, thin, completely still, standing just beyond the tree line. It was wearing something tattered and dark, and its face, it had no face. Just smooth, pale skin where features should have been. We ran, no gear, no tent, nothing. Just ran. We didn't stop until we hit the road again, hours later, scratched and exhausted. We flagged down a truck and got the hell out of there. We never went back to get our stuff. A week later, Lucas tried looking up more about Bear Creek. Turns out there have been reports dating back to the 60s. Campers disappearing, strange rituals, figures in the woods. But the forest isn't officially closed. The warning sign we saw, locals put it there themselves. I don't know what we saw that night. I just know we weren't alone. We should have listened to the warning. This happened in the summer of 2021, just outside of Grayling, Michigan. It was supposed to be a chill guys' weekend. Me and my best friend Jordan camping in the woods like we'd done a dozen times before. We picked a spot near the Ausable River. Secluded, quiet, and surrounded by thick pines. No other campers for miles. That's what we wanted. We got in Friday around noon, set up our tent, started a fire, and cracked a couple beers. Jordan brought his fishing gear, and I had my drone with me for some shots. Everything felt normal, peaceful. But around sundown, that feeling changed. I don't know how else to describe it except the woods got too quiet. No birds, no insects, just nothing. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Jordan noticed it too. He looked up from his beer and said, "You feel that?" I nodded. Yeah. Neither of us said much after that. That night we turned in around 10. The air was cool, the fire was dying out, and we were both tired. The tent was small but comfortable. I zipped the flap shut and turned on my headlamp just enough to read for a bit. I must have dozed off because I woke up to something moving outside. It wasn't loud, just crunching, like footsteps on dry pine needles. I sat up and held my breath. I figured maybe a deer had wandered into camp. Then it stopped, right outside our tent. Jordan was already awake, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. The steps circled the tent. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, pause. 3, 4. We didn't move, just listened. Then it stopped behind my side of the tent. Jordan mouthed, "Don't say anything." We waited for what felt like forever. Nothing. No breathing. No more steps. Eventually, we must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remember is sunlight coming through the tent walls. We unzipped the flap and looked around. Nothing was disturbed. No footprints. No animals. But my hiking boots were moved. I'd left them near the fire pit. Now they were side by side just outside the tent entrance, neatly placed, as if someone had set them there on purpose. Jordan thought I was messing with him. I thought he was messing with me. But the thing is, neither of us had been outside all night. We laughed it off, trying to ignore how weird it was. But neither of us said much that day. We hiked upriver, tried to fish, even went swimming to shake the nerves. And for a while it worked, until we found something around noon. About a mile from camp, Jordan stopped walking. There was a branch tied between two trees with twine, like a crude barrier. Hanging from the center of it was one of his socks, pinned to it with a toothpick. We stared at it for a long time. Jordan said, "We need to leave." But for some stupid reason, we didn't. We convinced ourselves it was a prank, maybe a hunter, or some local screwing with campers. We went back to camp, cooked, and kept a fire burning all day. That night, we stayed awake. We took turns watching the woods. At 2:40 a.m., it was my shift. Jordan was snoring lightly, and I was just sitting by the fire when I saw something. A shape, about 20 feet back in the tree line. It was barely visible, just a man standing still, completely still, half behind a tree. No flashlight, no sound, just watching. I froze, didn't even breathe. He didn't move. I blinked, and he was gone. I woke Jordan up, shaking. He grabbed a knife, and we both stood there, waiting for something to happen. But the woods stayed silent. At sunrise, we packed everything. We didn't even eat. We just wanted out. But Jordan wanted to hike to the river one last time to grab something he'd left behind, a waterproof case with his wallet and keys in it. I told him to wait and just leave it, but he insisted. So I waited at the camp while he ran down. He never came back. I waited an hour, then 2. I called out, walked the path, and found nothing. I started panicking. Called 911, but the signal was trash. Tried to follow the river trail, yelling his name, but it felt like I was going in circles. Finally, I made it back to the car and drove until I had a bar of service. Called the police. They searched for 3 days. Nothing. No sign of Jordan. No gear. No footprints. No clothes. The only thing they found was his waterproof case, sitting on a stump just outside our old camp, like someone had placed it there for me to find. It had his keys, wallet. They ruled it an accident, said he probably fell in the river and was swept away. But Jordan was a strong swimmer. We'd camped our whole lives. He didn't just vanish. I haven't been camping since. Sometimes I still see those boots sitting neatly outside my bedroom door, and I don't wear them anymore.